Hey everyone, good afternoon, and welcome to our information session for municipal utilities on grid resilience grants. Glad to have you all here with us on a Friday afternoon. It's a beautiful day here in Lansing. Hopefully it is where you are too. So logistics for today. Oh, by the way, my name is Jim Ostrowski and I work in EGLE's Environmental Support Division. I'll be moderating and kind of hanging out in the background today, helping out the team. So logistics for today, lines are all muted for right now. After the presentation, we're going to take some questions and answers. If you got a question, you could submit it through the Q&A box. At the time, you'll also be able to click the raise your hand icon if you'd rather ask your question verbally. We are also recording this session, and we'll be sending everyone who registered a link to the recording in the next couple of days, so you can be on the lookout for that in case you're interested in seeing it again or passing it along. Also, be sure to check the chat in your Zoom toolbar. The chat's going to have some additional information that you might want to catch. In addition, we'll be sending out or putting in the chat a copy of the presentation for you to download if you like. So with that, I'm going to send it over to Laura. Oh, Lauren, sorry. Lauren, there you go. Go ahead.
No problem.
It's Friday afternoon. You gotta give me a break.
Yes. Thank you everyone for attending. Like Jim said, my name is Lauren McGurl and I work in EGLE in the energy unit, and I will be managing this grant. We wanted to thank you for participating in this information section for the bill, section 40101D for municipal utilities. Here's the agenda. First, I want to introduce the panel we have today. I will have the panelists turn on their cameras, and if you can unmute yourself and say hello so everyone can see you. And then once you introduce yourself, you can just turn your camera off. First, we have Jake Wilkinson, the Energy Unit Manager.
Morning, everyone, or not morning, afternoon, everyone.
Then we have Julio Rovi with GDS Associates. He's been working with EGLE with this program, and he will talk about the prescription measures and the application later on.
You're muted, Julio.
Happy to be here. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you. Lastly, we have Nate Burnand with the Michigan Public Service Commission. He is the analyst for the Strategic Operations Division. I'm going to pass the mic to Nate to welcome everyone.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. As Lauren mentioned, my name is Nate Burnand. I work in the Strategic Operations Division of the Michigan Public Service Commission, where I focus on federal funding opportunities, particularly with respect to infrastructure investments into our electrical grid, reliability, and resiliency. To kick us off today, I'll be providing a brief overview of the MPSC's commitment to reliability and resiliency and how this federal funding opportunity can further those goals. A large part of my role here is engaging with stakeholders such as yourself across the state to ensure that we maximize the ability of federal funding opportunities like the Preventing Power Outages and Enhancing the Electrical Grid program, otherwise known as 40101D, to improve the reliability and resiliency of the grid here in Michigan. I'm excited to work with all of you on the successful implementation of these formula dollars. As I've mentioned, improving the reliability and resiliency of the grid, and particularly the electric distribution system, is one of the Michigan Public Service Commission's principal priorities. While progress towards a more reliable grid has been made through MPSC rate cases, integrated resource planning proceedings, commission orders, and a variety of work groups, which many of you may have participated on in the past, climate change and the increasingly destructive and frequent extreme weather events that accompany it have posed massive challenges to electric providers and regulators' ability to provide reliable power to customers. In recent years, ice has covered lines and disturbed power. High winds and storms have damaged power lines and adjacent vegetation, and Michiganders across the state have suffered as a result. In February and March of 2023, many thousands of Michiganders lost power for several days, and DTE reported it as the worst storm they have endured in 50 years. and also the most expensive to restore. These power outages put some of our state's most vulnerable people at risk, particularly the elderly and those who rely on reliable electricity to power critical medical devices. The power outages of this past year underscore the challenges we face in Michigan. Our climate can be expected to continue to grow more extreme into the foreseeable future, and we have a duty to invest in a more reliable grid in response. Simultaneously, the move to electrify the grid and our means of transportation is moving forward at a rapid pace, placing additional pressures on not just our supply of energy, but our grid's electric distribution system. Electrification will mean the integration of new energy sources, solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, and more into the fabric of our state's grid. Preparing our grid for electrification while also making our grid more reliable and more resilient, all while maintaining our shared commitment to equity and energy affordability, is a monumental task. But I am confident that we can find a path forward. The billions of dollars in federal funding opportunities provided to Michigan by the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act are one such strategy we can leverage to meet the moment. Section 40101D of the Grid Resilience and Innovative Partnerships Program is one of many federal funding opportunities that Michigan can use to improve reliability in our state. The formula dollars available under the Preventing Outages and Enhancing Resilience of the Electric Grid program, that's a mouthful, has the potential to set the tone for how Michigan leverages federal funding opportunities to maximize improvements in the reliability and resiliency of the power that Michiganders rely on. The dollars allotted to Michigan by this program provide us the opportunity to set best practices, generate knowledge for future opportunities, and set the tone for how Michigan will take full advantage of both the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, ultimately maximizing tangible benefits to Michiganders. We are eager to work together on developing the request for a proposal and to review the proposals that ensue from that, demonstrating how these dollars can support enhanced grid reliability, prepare our state for electrification, and create good-paying jobs right here in Michigan. Thanks again for being here today, and I look forward to working with all of you towards our shared goals for a reliable and resilient grid. I will kick it back to Lauren.
Thank you, Nate. So first we are going to talk about, give you guys some program updates and a tentative schedule or a timeline. Next, like I said, Julio will talk about the prescriptive measures or projects along with the application. Then we'll open up for question and answer. So some updates that we wanted to give you is we did submit the application back in December of 2022. And in the same month, DOE updated the FOIA or FOA to include both years 1 and 2 funding. So we had to adjust, update and resubmit our application to include both years instead of just the one, which we did submit that in March of 2023. And we are currently waiting on the DOE's review of the application. They have accepted some applications just for a couple of states, but we have not heard back for the state of Michigan. So here's a tentative timeline. Again, we are still waiting on the DOE to hear back from them. So we updated our application back in March of 2023. We're hoping to post the RFP in June of 2023, tentative again, pending DOE's approval. Application deadline tentatively is for mid-July. The start of the projects are effective date of the grant agreement. The projects need to end in September of 2025. And again, the deadline for payment submission would be September 30th, 2025. Those last 2 dates come right from the FOA. So we don't have any lenience on those, but the other ones are all tentative pending on our approval. So I'm going to pass the mic to Julio to talk about the prescriptive measures and application.
Thank you very much, Lauren. I'll share my screen. Well, first of all, I'm very happy to see so many of you joining this call. Many of you participated in our informal conversations that have allowed us to get to today. So I want to acknowledge that as we get going. And also, I will point out that, as we go about this, we are having conversations with each of the constituencies that we had targeted from the fall. The public power, this morning we spoke with co-ops. Today, this afternoon, we're going to be talking with muni utilities. And next week, we will be talking with the IOUs. So in these updates that Lauren was talking about, we want to point out a couple of things that have not changed. Foremost, that Michigan's application is focused on improving electric reliability and resilience. All of that remains the same. That is the center of this. MPSC and EGLE are committed to the idea of addressing impacts to aging infrastructure and better preparing for the impacts of climate change. The second thing that has not changed is the eligible parties, meaning that we will continue to follow the guidance from the Department of Energy by distinguishing large operators, which are those that have electricity sales over 4 terawatt hours per year, and the small operators, which are below the 4 terawatt hour per year threshold. And in that second group is where the co-ops, the munis, and the small investor-owned utilities coexist. Next, the eligible activities will remain the same. And I'm going to review those in just a second, but we talked about this earlier when we looked at the funding opportunity. And by earlier, I mean, we talked about it in the fall and then in the formal public hearing in November. And finally, that 50% of the funds will go to the small operators. So none of that has changed. So to reiterate, the projects within the scope, the eligible projects, are the same ones. This list has not changed. We have reorganized it, and you'll see why in a minute. But it's basically hardening of facilities, power lines, substations, things like that. Replacement of old overhead conductors or reconductoring or undergrounding equipment, pole management, some relocation. These are variations of reconductoring. And a big one that you all brought to our attention as a key priority is vegetation management. This list is where the idea of the prescriptive projects came from. Now, other eligible projects are also possible should your organization decide not to pursue the prescriptive projects. And these are listed here: weatherization technologies, fire-resistant technologies, monitoring and control, items related to distributed energy resources, particularly things that are enhanced system adaptive capacity in disruptive events. And in the AALRD, they talk about microgrids and battery storage subcomponents, but the instructions also say very categorically that this particular grant cannot fund new generation. So that's kind of a weird microgrid if you don't have some form of generation. So we're really not expecting that a lot is going to happen here, or that it's not going to be funded through this mechanism. Adaptive protection technologies and modeling technologies are also part of this other group of eligible activities. Equally important are the objectives of this particular grant that has to do with improving reliability, improving resiliency, and being able to figure out, what is, how do these investments translate into better quality of service and better quality of life, particularly for those communities that have been disadvantaged or have a high energy burden. We had talked in the fall about having similar approach for the first 2 years. This has been restated by the Department of Energy by merging the first 2 years into a single funding stream and a single application process. So the first tranche that we're going to be releasing the RFP for is going to be for years 1 and 2. Other elements such as energy justice and focus on disadvantaged communities, you will keep hearing this over and over. You know, even if you have simpler projects, we want to make sure that that the benefit goes to these communities, and you know, things that will generate the largest community benefit. And then you know, in general, all related to being able to prepare for climate change, the impacts of climate change and more severe storms and other weather conditions that you know, Michigan is unfortunately starting to get used to. Finally, for the larger investments to consider labor force, the creation of workforce that will be able to continue maintaining and improving systems, electrical power distribution systems. Just to restate, this is also something that we are keeping unchanged, is that you know, EGLE has applied for the full funding and is responsible for getting the full match. It will be administering the grant and issuing the awards. The utilities will apply directly to EGLE, and for the large operators, the 2 large utilities, investor-owned utilities, they're going to have a 1-to-1 match. But the smaller operators, IOUs, co-ops, and munis, will have a 1-to-3 match. So this remains unchanged from the fall. So I think you've heard that there will be an evaluation criteria in the RFP, and it should be no surprise. It's going to touch upon the same things we keep talking over and over about, which is priority to generate the greatest community benefit, you know, address things of energy burden and energy justice, and use language to help improve labor standards and protections. Now, what has changed? So a couple of things that have changed are very relevant, and I'm very happy to have received a significant amount of input from you, from some of you, to help make this so. But what's changed, you know, on the very top, it's changes in DOE's instructions to the state, particularly because they changed the time frame to respond, and that sort of created a delay in being able to then allocate their awards. So that's what resulted in merging years 2022 and 2023, which is what we're calling years 1 and 2. And what that means is that instead of having 2, you know, 7.5 or 8, you know, a little bit over $8 million per year with match allocated each year, it is twice that amount, or $16.4 million. So half of that will be going to the small operators. So another thing that has changed is that we have introduced this idea of the prescriptive projects, and I'll mention that a little bit more in just a minute. And the next thing that I think is an important addition to the process is that co-ops and muni utilities can submit joint applications. And the logic behind that is that you know, we're looking for economies of scale, particularly for those of you that are working with a consulting firm or a trade association or some sort of partner that helps you get your work done, and that would facilitate that process. And we're very, very happy to have heard of the interest, in particularly with this particular group of munis, to be working with a trade association. So at the end of the day, each grant will go to the individual respective muni utility, and the muni utilities will have to provide details on what they're proposing, and how much money they're asking for, and be responsible for implementation. But we believe that there are some economies of scale in just putting it together all in the same format by a single party that does QA on behalf of all of you. Finally, grantees that are looking at the opportunities will be able to pursue these prescriptive projects that we have been able to come up with. So again, this is these changes and these recommendations that we're making for the state of Michigan and upwards onto the Department of Energy are the result of input from many of you. So what are these prescriptive projects? The prescriptive projects are sort of common sense projects, particularly related to maintenance and operation activities that you do on a regular basis to address breakdowns of the system or to increase reliability. And you have been doing this for years. These are smaller projects. They could be large, but fundamentally they are relatively simple. And there's a lot of experience and tradition of doing these. So we're talking about pole replacements, fuses, reclosers, vegetation management, because all of these are relatively easy to quantify, and the actual project is not terribly complicated to implement. So there would be plenty of time, even with the delays of the funding streams, to be able to complete the projects within a reasonable short amount of time. The other thing that we found as a compelling idea is that EGLE can proactively study if the equipment to be used could comply with Build America, Buy America, and NEPA requirements, and try to do this homework or make as much progress as we can with this information, and then just pass it on to you. So ultimately, of course, you will be responsible for it, but it will be a lot easier if we tell you who the manufacturers are, what is it that they do, does it already comply, and in any special instructions on NEPA. And finally, the last element that really makes it compelling to look at prescriptive projects is that the cost of many of those measures is well documented. We received a generous amount of information from the municipal utilities about their cost to do many of these prescriptive project ideas. We also received a formal reports from the MPSC regarding the cost of doing these types of measures and others in the reports from the regulated utilities. So the cost and the range of costs and scope of work is fairly well documented. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the same slide, just presenting it once again. These all fit very, very nicely into the ALRD, the Administrative and Legal Requirements document that was issued by DOE last year. And through the amendments that that the funding opportunity has submitted, none of these things have changed. And they are, the only thing that we've done is we sorted them in a different order from the way it's written in the ALRD to just emphasize that this is where the idea of the prescriptive projects was born. So what are we expecting that is going to be coming up next? Well, we expect the DOE to issue the award, as Lauren indicated. Hopefully, if we're optimistic, it'll happen in the next weeks. We hope it's not past July, but we also know that we don't have any control over that. So we hope it's not going to be longer than that. As soon as it arrives, then there's a clock that starts for EGLE to reply, accept the funds, and then reply with a number of documents back to the Department of Energy indicating how EGLE is going to go about this. So one of the steps that will happen once the award is received by the state is we are going to issue an invitation to you so that you can sign up to receive the RFP, which is already in draft form. And that invitation is basically intended to inform EGLE on who is interested and to gather the information that would, you know, we would need to ask that in every grant later. So we're hoping we just get this information ahead of time and just, you know, get that out of the way and keep it. And since it is very likely that, you know, the folks that request grant money in years 1 and 2 may be interested in coming back in years 3, 4, and 5, you know, that information, that database will be there along with, you know, other information that EGLE maintains on their grantees as well as their vendors and providers. Next, the grantees can pool efforts. So we believe that this was something that seemed to resonate particularly well with the municipal utilities, given the great relationship you have with your trade association, and the fact that we can, you know, from the sense of the state, we could get you know, a quality assurance step in that by putting it together in a consistent format, we should be able to spot things that are going to be problematic or that are not going to work out. And it also makes it easier because, you know, we can work directly with your trade associations or with whomever you select and try to make sure that, you know, we address any questions that they may have. EGLE will continue efforts to streamline and simplify. You know, we have heard very loud and clear that you want the application to be simple, the award granting process to be as simple as possible, as well as the, you know, quality assurance and reporting processes as well. So we will continue looking for ways to make that happen while complying with the federal requirements. Now, it is our experience now so far, and Michigan being one of the first states to look into the 40101D very proactively. And you know, in Michigan, we established the way, or we led other states in the way that we generated the budgets, and that we allocated the funds, and that we made sure that we knew the source of the matching funds as well. We also made it very straightforward and easy for DOE to understand how we were meeting their requirements to merge years 1 and 2. And then for those projects that are going to be considered for years 1 and 2, the ones on the left are the ones that we believe we might be able to help a few of you that have straightforward projects that are relatively simple, you know, fall into this compliance path, which is prescriptive projects, which we think should be processed more expeditiously than those projects that require a full technical review, BABA review, and NEPA review. And all of this is intended to, you know, keep the process going. You know, once the grantees submit their responses, they will be evaluated in Michigan. There will be a checklist and other instruments to try to make the review as expeditious and transparent as possible. But ultimately, those projects that get approved by Michigan will have to get a final approval at DOE. So Michigan has also led the conversation with the Department of Energy to try to get approval for these prescriptive projects. And so far, we have received a very positive feedback on the topic. And in fact, they've told us that they would like to take this to all the states and include recommendations that may be applicable in other states, albeit not as critical for Michigan. So we're hoping to be able to have an even broader list of prescriptive projects that have gone through analysis for, you know, Buy America and Build America and for NEPA, as well as to understand the ranges of costs, you know, all of which it would be designed to get faster approval processes at the agency. So, the agency sends this to EGLE, and then EGLE starts the next step, which is the actual start point of the project. Giving the final approval for the award and allowing the utilities to get the projects underway. So last few thoughts. Just remember that the priority is going to be on these underserved communities, and there's going to be a lot of interest in trying to see if we can, make it possible for resources to get to, the smaller communities, rural communities, we'll continue having a conversation with you. You should know that DOE has informed the states that they may be issuing additional instructions. And although we don't expect that those instructions are going to change in a fundamental way, the way we have designed this, we do need to make the disclaimer that, should there be new instructions, we will communicate them to you. And so as you are responding to this, it's the proposal that you read is as close as possible to the information we have been exchanging over these conversations, and that there are no surprises, and you can go ahead and make your request, and we can get these improvements underway as early as possible. So with that, I've completed my portion. Lauren, I'm going to pass this back to you.
Thank you, Julio. I am just going to share my screen again really quick. So here is where to find some up-to-date information. We have created a website for the Grid Resiliency program, and at that website, they'll have up-to-date information and timelines. When the RFP is available, it will be posted here, as well as probably go through our Gov delivery system. The application budget form is also there, and then links to meeting recordings, the public meeting that we held back in November 2022, as well as this one. And the PowerPoints will also be there, and other resources as well. So how to get to the website? The easiest way is to go to michigan.gov/energy. And you can choose funding opportunities. It's towards the lower bottom of the webpage. And then you can choose grid resiliency. And I believe we will also be putting that link in the chat as well. Now we are going to open up for Q&A or have a conversation with everyone, anything that they would like to bring up. So if everyone can turn their cameras back on for the panelists. Again, it's Lauren McGurl, myself, EGLE environmental engineer, and then we have Jake Wilkinson from EGLE, the energy unit manager, Julio from GDS Associates, and then Nate Vernon from MPSC. I will stop sharing my screen, and Jim will help us go through the Q&A. So I will pass it back to Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. And just want to remind people, if they have a question, you can type it in the question box on your Zoom toolbar, or you can click the raise hand icon and I will unmute you so you can ask your question. We had a few questions that are already in here. First one is, could more funds be made available for small utilities? Isn't the need greater for small utilities who have fewer resources for improving our grids?
Julio, did you want to take that one?
I can take a stab at that, but I'll let Jake also answer. This is slightly a policy issue, and we contributed with the discussion of the policy, but the policy, basically came down to us. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill pretty much dictates the amount of money there is. It's that simple. The rule was that the annual allocation should be distributed between all of the eligible parties. And the eligible parties included small operators, large operators, and some other institutions that provide services for electricity generation. But the first hurdle that we ran into is that because the definition is those that sell 4 terawatts or more, or in 4 terawatts or less, those parties that provide parts and services to the utility industry don't actually do the generation and selling. So that becomes a concern. So we decided to not get into that debate until DOE solved it, but also not delay releasing the funds for the utilities that are clearly in the list of those that generate electricity. Now, the allocation of $7.5 million per year was the formula. That's why this is called a formula grant. It's done by a formula. So the requirements from DOE was that the money should be allocated between large operators and small operators in direct proportion, so that no less than the percentage served by small operators be the percentage of the money awarded. Okay, so small operators represent about or provide services to about 18% of Michigonians, and 18%, 1/8. Okay, but the policy decision was that 50%, 50, would be made available for the small operators. So to answer your question, there was an increase from 18% to 50% in order to address the needs of the rural communities and the smaller operators, which are typically represented by the investor-owned utilities in the north, the co-ops, and the munis. I hope that wasn't too long, but it was detailed.
Yeah, thanks for the details on Julio. Jake, did you have more you wanted to add?
No, not really. I think Julio covered it quite well. The only addition I might make is, I think we all recognize that some of the smaller utilities might have some greater needs, but we also didn't want to ignore the fact that, the 2 large operators in the state do serve the bulk of the population in the state. And so, we had to kind of make that decision, make that judgment call somewhere. I think that's largely the reason that we did increase from the 18% that Julio was talking about up to 50, and kind of just split it down the middle. But tried to serve the smaller utilities better than we were required to do from DOE.
All right. Okay. Are you planning to send the RFP to each municipality or just MMEA to streamline and simplify?
I can answer that one. We plan on posting it on our website, and it should go out in a Gov delivery, just like the webinars or information sessions did.
Yeah, so if you got the announcement for this webinar, you should get an announcement for the grants. Also, we did put in the chat a link to the website where the information will be posted. So you can find it there. This person's saying we have a larger member that is curious about applying on their own versus through MMEA. Can you please confirm that each utility will be assessed individually and whether there's an advantage or disadvantage to them applying on their own versus through MMEA?
I can take a stab at that.
Mm-hmm.
So the grants, the contract relationship, which is a grant, is directly between the utility and EGLE, okay? And they are individual. What we're looking to do with these joint applications is really just save some of you the time of having to learn all the little rules that go into responding to an RFP, and have somebody that can handhold you a little bit more, because once we issue the RFP, we have to stop talking. Okay, so we're trying to do a lot of the talking before we issue the RFP, and it is easier for us to have a conversation and get MMEA really up to speed, but also for the sake of transparency and for the sake of, these are federal dollars and taxpayer monies, we have to be able to make it available to anybody. So it could be that you do it on an individual basis, or you could do it through an association or a consulting firm. The point is that we're trying to make it easy for the applicant to decide which path makes the most sense for their grant application. Okay. So whether you are large or small, the conversation is more, do we get along with these other folks, and can we rely on a joint application, or do we feel that we really need to send it ourselves? The details of how MMEA works with its members is up to you. You are the members, okay? And we're also trying to make sure that every single applicant understands that there will be a few sections of the response that are unique to you. Like, we have to know what your unique need is, what your unique proposal is, what your unique budget is, and what your unique approach is to address disadvantaged communities, because each of you has a different community. Okay, so those things are going to be all unique. Where do we get advantages? If MMEA serves as a coordinator and a quality control, it would be easier for them to look at it. And if somebody sends something that is really very poor quality, they might be able to go back and say, hey guys, I think you missed the mark here. Okay, and you can have that conversation with them. Okay, and try to get consistency in the way these are presented, so someone is not disqualified because they didn't understand, some portion of the RFP or something like that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, just to kind of put a point on that, I think those points are all very valid that Julio mentioned. Once it gets to us from, we receive the application, each application will be reviewed and considered based on the merits of that application alone, regardless of whether it's through some collaborative effort or in a standalone application. We'll be considering those again on the merits of that application as it was received by EGLE.
Yeah, the evaluations are separate, and the organizing party is not liable for your grant.
All right, good. Thanks, guys. That's good answers. We don't have any more questions in the queue, nor do I see any hands raised. So I'm going to turn it over to Lauren and see if you have anything you want to say and wrap up there, Lauren.
Yeah, I just wanted to, again, just share the contact information for everyone. There we go. Again, here's our contact information on the screen. I believe we had 1 or 2 call-ins, so I will just repeat my email address for those. Again, I'll be the grant manager for this grant, and my name is Lauren McGurl, and my email address is magirl@michigan.gov. And thank you, everyone, for attending today.
Yeah, thanks everybody for attending today. Just want to remind you that we did record this session. We're sending everyone who registered a link next couple of days. We'll also be following up with all you attendees, some details, basically the stuff that we put in the chat today and any other links that you might find relevant. I want to thank you all for listening in and attending today, and for our great team of experts here that have been answering questions and presenting. Hopefully you all have a great rest of your afternoon and great weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.